Check 1, 2, check. Check, check. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Rescue Owners Live. My name is Kirk. I am your host, and I'm super excited to bring to you a very special guest tonight. And before I do, I just want to let you know this is season 2, episode 7, and we have a very special treat in mind. And here is his intro. So, formerly the CEO of a small oil company, he is a highly sought after speaker on the subject of raising capital, having raised in excess of $2 billion. Yes, that is billion with a B. Today, he mentors others around the world as part of a global coaching business on how to raise funds from high net worth investors to build, buy, and scale a business or fund a special project like real estate. Having worked alongside many large real estate syndicators, he is viewed as an industry expert at raising capital. Do me a favor and blow up the chat and welcoming my man, Brad Blazer. Brad, how's it going, sir?
It's great to be here. How you doing, Kirk?
Doing great. Is your camera working? Because all I've seen is a black screen.
My camera should be working. Let me just go ahead here and find out what in the world is going on here.
Not a problem.
Let's see.
So while you're doing
There
that,
it is.
Oh, there it is. See, that's
Perfect.
so much better looking at you live.
Technology, what a great thing, huh? I tell
you what. Yes, sir. Hey, Brad, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here tonight. You were speaking to business owners all across the country, and we actually have several that listen across the world. So you do have a wide audience here tonight. They are business owners looking to grow their business more effectively, efficiently, and profitably. I saw you do some crazy stuff on LinkedIn recently. Were you flying a jet? What was that all
about? We've flown in a couple of jets. We fly private when we go to events. And then, of course, we were in the fighter jet having a good time doing some aerial aerobatics. That was definitely pretty cool.
What kind of G's were you pulling?
According to the pilot, I pulled a little over 6 G's that day.
Wow.
He told me what to do. And thank God I didn't black out. I was awake and cognizant for the entire flight. In fighter pilot school, they tell you what's going to happen when you get to about 3.5 to 4 Gs is your vision will start to narrow, and you'll see your line of sight come in. And we got to about 5 Gs, and that started to happen. And I just, as they say, squeeze your butt cheeks, force that blood right back to your heart, and look up at the canopy. And yeah, it was pretty awesome. It was definitely the experience of a lifetime. I'd have to say it was definitely way up there on the bucket list to go up in a fighter and be behind a trained aerial fighter pilot.
That's awesome.
Definitely just wonderful, wonderful day.
I love that, man. Well, so we actually met for the very first time a few weeks ago at Ken Jocelyn's inaugural Create event, which was incredible, by the way. And you were one of the speakers, and I pulled you aside. I was like, listen, I love what you had to say. I want you to bring that to my audience. Are you willing to come? And you said, of course, absolutely. So I can't thank you enough for that. Can you kind of give, I know you're the master at raising money. So we want to hear more about that, but can you kind of give the background of who you are, what you do, why you do it?
Yeah, absolutely. I like to share the story that when I was a young kid, about 7, 8 years old, much like Robert Kiyosaki, there was a person in my life that was very instrumental. Of course, I had my mom and dad, but I was blessed. I had a rich uncle, and I never forget, I was about maybe 7, 8 years old, and we were at the Palm Beach Country Club. He was one of the owners. And he was kind of walking me around after dinner. And he said, you see that guy over there? That's the guy that has all the pencils that you use in school. And this guy over here makes all the hangers. And then he put his hand on my shoulder and he said something that at the age of 7 was just a major revelation in my life. He said, Brad, someday, if you can figure out what you're really, really good and gifted at and package that up and share it to the world where it helps change lives, it will change other people's lives, but in doing that, it will change yours as well. And I never really took that to heart until many years later where I was sitting at home one night after watching a TV show with Steve Harvey, and he was kind of sharing that same principle with his audience. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I said, oh my God, like my hard skill, the one thing that I know how to do better than anybody I've ever met is learn how to raise capital. And I was taught that at a pretty young age. And that allowed me to build a multi-million-dollar oil company that I was the founder and CEO of. I was 23, dropped out of college, never drilled a well, had no prior business experience. All I knew how to do was get on the phone and raise massive amounts of money, which is what I did. And so today, kind of fast forward, Kirk, as you found out when I was there at Ken Jocelyn's event, today we run a global coaching program where I mentor and train people literally all over the world. I mean, the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Brazil, Dubai, Finland, Portugal, Africa, because what I teach and how I go about teaching it will work almost anywhere. And so in addition to doing that, I also am an active, of course, real estate investor myself and a philanthropist. But, just love what I do. I wake up every day just blessed and humbled to be able to help people understand that key fundamental principle that Kiyosaki writes about in Rich Dad, and that is you can put your own money to risk and you can grow a business, but it will take you a long time, or you can learn how to master the skill of using other people's money and do it much faster and much quicker.
OPM, other people's money.
OPM, not hopium. Hopium is a powerful drug. A lot of people hope that their life's going to get better. A lot of people hope that things are going to get better. And hopium is one of the most powerful drugs out there because you can hope all day long, but until you put effort and action behind knowledge you get from people that are at where you want to be, that's the secret. That's what I learned by going to events and meeting a lot of these very, very powerful thought leaders on stage that were, light years ahead of where I wanted to be. But then by learning from them, and then, of course, backing what I learned with some effort and action, that's where I started to see the massive transformation in my life taking place.
Brad, one thing I see all the time, I'm sure you see it too, is you can give your students that you're coaching, you're mentoring, all the information, all the tricks, all the things that they need to know how to do. But so often they don't take the action of implementing what they just learned. Where's the disconnect? Why do you think that is?
As a coach, and I've shared the stage and I've talked to many other coaches, and we all agree because we all see the same thing. We call it you fall off the bus. You sign up because you have good intentions, but let's face it, a lot of people have good intentions, but they're not committed. You really have to be committed to change, because changing your habits, changing what you do in life, it ain't easy. Let's face it. We as human beings are largely creatures of habit. And our brain is designed to do one thing. Our brain is designed to keep us alive. And there's a part of the brain that's largely responsible for what we call the fight or flight syndrome. When anything difficult poses itself in our life, it sends a signal to the other part of the brain that says, too much work involved here, too much effort. And you retreat and go back to what you know, which is comfort. Change takes massive effort. And a lot of people that have the intention that say, I want what he wants, or I want to hire him as a coach because I want a better life, aren't willing to put forth the work or put forth the effort to bring about that change. They look at someone like me and they want, boom, the instant result. I like to tell people, everybody wants six-pack abs. But when
all right, come on now.
How many people actually have them, right? Because you have to go to the gym. You have to eat properly. It takes a lot of work to develop that six-pack. Well, it takes a hell of a lot of work to be a successful entrepreneur, to run a seven-figure business, to wake up early every day and get the stuff that you want to get out of the way done, which is the workout, the family time, so that you can focus on your business. And so I think a lot of people that sign up for coaching or sign up for programs start with good intentions. It's just like New Year's resolutions. And then once they realize the effort that it takes, they either lose interest, they fall off the bus, or they just realize I'm happy where I'm at, and I don't want to put forth that extra little effort to get where I want to be. Because at the end of the day, and I say this all the time, there's not much difference between leading an ordinary life and leading an extraordinary life. It's just a simple decision. And I learned this from Tim Grover. Tim Grover, of course, was the coach to people like Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, Kobe Bryant. So he's dealing with the very upper echelon of people in professional sports. And I said, Tim, what's the difference between a guy like a Kobe or like a Tiger Woods or like a Michael Jordan and pretty much everybody else that plays in the same league? He said, it's one decision. It's the decision they made to put their amateurish bullshit ways behind them and to go pro in everything they do in all areas of their life, not just in the sport, but in everything, their relationships with other people, how they show up, the amount of effort they put forth. And until people are willing to have that conversation with themselves, things aren't going to change. Once you have that conversation and you're totally committed to that change, then and only then will you see dramatic results.
Wow. Okay. So much to unpack there. The decision to go from amateur to professional, I mean, it kind of stems back to your original point of commitment, right? You got to commit to being that professional. Yep. And I'm sitting here looking at, that's the difference between ordinary and extraordinary, right? So you mentioned change and the discomfort of change. Would you say that, that is a learned skill to be like, hey, I'm going to force myself to have the habit of putting myself in being discomfort, how do I wear this? Being uncomfortable by doing change more frequently. Yep. I mean, like, how do you say? I mean, obviously, there's a balance between routine and having habits and good routines and a schedule, but there's also pushing yourself, right? So, what would you say the difference is between those two?
Well, when you study human performance and you study where change takes place, there's basically three zones. Look at it like a target. Okay, there's the center. That's your comfort zone. That's where you spend the bulk of your time. You're comfortable. You got a roof over your head. You're driving a nice car. You're able to put food on the table. Beyond that comfort zone, there's what I call the stretch zone. That's where you stretch. You work a little harder. You put forth a little bit more effort. It's kind of like a daily exercise regimen. You're going to the gym every day. It's not something that you enjoy doing. Let's face it, most people don't find pleasure and enjoyment in spending an hour or an hour and a half going for a 5 to 6 mile run, or getting on a bike and riding 40 to 60 miles, or spending an hour and a half pushing weights around the gym. Why do you do it? You do it because you understand the benefit of the result. Well, the same thing applies to business. Business doesn't improve and you don't see dramatic, huge improvements overnight. As Ken would say, it's small incremental efforts that compound over time that lead to those dramatic big results. Well, it's the same thing in life, because I've studied human performance. Your reality, the life that you live, is a reflection of your belief system. And your belief system is largely reinforced by your habits. Your daily habits reinforce your beliefs, and then your beliefs largely define your lifestyle and the reality that you live. So the easiest way to change is to form and create new habits. And so if you start to emulate what very successful people do, what their lifestyle, what their life looks like, and you start asking yourself, like, I want to be here. Well, what does that person do every day? What does their daily regimen look like? They wake up, they work out, They review the night before the priorities and the major tasks for the following day. So they're attacking life on the offensive rather than the defensive. And so when you start understanding those patterns of success and you start implementing them into your life and your lifestyle, that's where change takes place. And I think one of the biggest things that people are unwilling to do is to really look at themselves introvertly and have a conversation with themselves. Because the biggest sale that you will ever make in life is not to a prospect, not to another person, it's to yourself. It's really looking at yourself in the mirror if you're not happy where you are and saying, self, I apologize for letting myself get to the point I'm at. I'm either overweight, or I don't have the net worth, or I don't have as much money in the bank as I thought I would have, and I forgive myself. From today forward, there ain't no excuse. And from today forward, I'm going to show up, and I'm going to commit, and I'm going to do the things that get me uncomfortable, make me uncomfortable, so I can start seeing massive change in my life and in my lifestyle. I'm going to start reading books. I'm going to start attending events. I'm going to start having conversations with people that have altitude over me, that earn more, do more, have bigger thoughts. Because you're the average of the 5 to 7 people you spend most of your time with. A lot of people don't understand that concept. And once you start going to these events like you did where we met, and you start hearing from people like Dr. John Maxwell or Jesse Itzler or David Meltzer, myself and others, you're like, wow, all of these people here on stage are thinking big. They're doing big things with their lives. And what that does is it exposes your mind to start to think the same way. And you start realizing that things perhaps that you thought were not possible are possible. And then you just start chipping away at them, just like an artist would chip away at a piece of rock building a sculpture. And as you chip away and you make progress, you start seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and you start realizing that dream or that goal you had is actually attainable. I think one of the biggest struggles people have, Kirk, is they just never get started. And what a shame that they never get started, right? It's one of those things where you always hear, well, what if I can't do that? That's great. But look at the loss in not even trying. What if you can? See, that's where the big message is. You'll never know whether you could have or whether you couldn't have until you try. But do you want to be in your 90s and live a life of regret where you wake up one day and said, man, I had so much potential with my life that I wasted. If I only took effort on half the ideas or half the things that I had wanted to do, how could my life have been very different? I think that's the big lesson here, is that whether you think you can or you think you can't, as Zig Ziglar would have said, you're always going to be right.
Wow. Wow. That's so powerful. What you think is what you say. What you say is what you do becomes your legacy. And yep. I'm sitting here this awestruck. I mean, you're literally puking advice. I mean, I absolutely love it. I mean, you laugh and look, this is a whole page of notes I've already taken from what you said so far in 19 minutes. Listen, if you are just now joining us, Rescue Owners Live, my name is Kirk. You're on with Brad Blazer. And if you have, listen, hit that share button, because I guarantee there's someone in your network that needs to hear what Brad Blazer has to say tonight. So, and make sure, if you don't have him already, pen a piece of paper, get him out immediately, because he's going to be bringing the heat as we continue. Now, biggest sell, you just mentioned the biggest sell in life is the sell you make to yourself. Yeah. I absolutely love that. I've heard several people say that, and it's like sometimes you just got to hear it, 20 times before it finally sinks in. And so I really appreciate you bringing that up. You talked about reading, you talk about events, you talk about the network. You explained, hey, this is the reason why your network is so important. You are the sum of the 5 people around you. Can you talk about reading? Why is it so important to read? Because I know a lot of people don't like to read. I love reading, by the way.
There's so much information out there. Number one, of course, is I'm a 3-time author. I've got 3 great books that you can find all on Amazon. And I'm not proclaiming that you have to go out and buy all my books. Of course, I'd be humbled and blessed if
Why
you
not?
do.
Why not?
But there's so much information out there where you can literally learn just about anything that you want to learn and study. I mean, you want to learn science, you want to learn, mathematics, you want to learn how to be successful, just pick up the book and read. But I think the key is you want to read books that are written by people that, number one, have done what they quote proclaim to teach or telling you how to do in that book. Number two is when you read, you want to take notes. It's one thing to read, but it's an entirely different thing to basically read and absorb and digest. And it's just like listening, right? A lot of times you'll hear something, but you don't really hear it. And a good example of that is, for all the people here that, have a significant other, whether it's a fiance or a husband or a spouse or a wife or whatever, your wife will come into the room and maybe ask you to do something. And you're like, yep, that's okay. I'll do it in a minute. And then she leaves and she comes back in 5 minutes and she says, didn't you hear what I just asked you to do? And you're like, what? You cognitively heard it because you responded, but you didn't take action because you didn't get up and do what was asked of you. And she's like, well, the same thing applies to reading. You can read printed words, but then they go in one ear and out the other. The best way to read, and I do this, is I take a highlighter, I highlight, I dog ear pages that I can come back to. And there are certain books literally that I'll go back and I'll read again because there's so much content and information in there that I just want to absorb and apply. But reading is one of the most powerful ways that you literally can transform, educate yourself, and get the knowledge so that you can start having bigger thoughts, start doing bigger things. And I try to read at least a good, 2 or 3 books a month. I mean, you can see behind me, I've got a huge library just right here in the office, but I got books literally by my bed. I got books in another room in the house. I got books in the car. And I just love to read because I love to experience what other people are wanting to teach. And that's the whole reason that people write books. It's to teach others what they know so that you can learn from their past, avoid their mistakes, and then implement in your own personal life some of the teachings, hopefully, that are in that book that you can take away from you. I mean, so many people, when I go to events, say, man, yeah, I read Think and Grow Rich, or I read Napoleon Hill's book, and it just changed my life. Well, how did it change your life? It was just reading it, man. Just the message and everything I learned just changed the way I think. So I wholeheartedly endorse reading, and I encourage those that are not avid readers to just pick up a book and start the process. And when you finish, get another book and start the process and just find good stuff that you can read.
Brad, what I'm hearing you say is, there are authors out there who, and you got to weed them out, but obviously who have done it. That means that there's a blueprint to do what you're trying to do right now. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Exactly, 100%. Think of it like the blueprint. That's actually the name of my 4th book.
Is it really?
For Your Better Self. But you're absolutely right. That's 100% largely what it is. It's understanding that, but it's also understanding, Kirk, largely how the mind operates. How the mind basically is programmed to default to a place of complacency and comfort. We're taught in school largely to do what? To conform, to graduate, to get a job, to go to work in the workforce, to then save and get a 401k and try to get ahead financially. And that's fine. I'm not knocking our school system, but we have a major problem in the world today. And that problem is so many people are struggling financially. Nowadays, it almost takes 2 people in the household just to support the household because of inflation and the fact that things have become so expensive. Well, there's other people over here on the other side of the fence that are rich, that have 7-figure incomes, that understand how to invest in things like real estate, or they started a business. Well, they don't teach those things in school. That's why you have to go to events. That's why sometimes you have to join meetups or start going to some of these real estate networking groups or masterminds. It's to learn how to rehab or how to invest in multifamily, or like I teach, how to use OPM and raise money from investors. Once you learn that and then apply it, the sky's the limit. I mean, you can go from zero to creating a 7-figure net worth in as short a time as 24 to 36 months. And what just excites the hell out of me is I meet people at these events that are in their 30s that are making millions. There was a guy that was at the event you and I attended that was in his 20s, just closed a $30 million deal, Abbas.
Yeah, his name is a boss, right?
Yeah, so it's being done. It can be done. And the message that I want to share with all of your listeners is there's no reason that you can't be doing it too. You just got to wake up and just largely say to yourself, I deserve more. I should be doing these things, and then start seeking out the people or the places where you can get that knowledge. A lot of it is like this show right here that you and I are on going live. It's after the show, reaching out to me or picking up some books or finding out, where you can go to another event and get in the room so that you start opening up your mind and start exposing yourself to bigger thoughts. If you just basically do the same thing every single day that you're doing now, your life's not going to change, right? It's getting out of that comfort zone, realizing that you need to seek out certain information, finding that, and then implementing it and taking action.
I love that. Brad, this is incredible. And I actually just put in the comment section. So if you're watching us, whether it's YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, check the comment section, because I just put a link to Brad Blazer's website where you absolutely how to raise millions in investor capital in the next 4 weeks. So take a moment. It's completely free. You'll get to learn all of the things that he wants you to learn. And then if you want to dig deeper, I guarantee he has some more, stuff for you. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Hey, listen, ladies and gentlemen, if you are listening to us tonight, first of all, again, hit that share button, because there's someone in your network that needs to hear what Brad Blazer has to say tonight. But number two, I want to make sure that if you have questions tonight, go ahead and throw that in the chat as well, because this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to be able to ask Brad, unless you just go deep with him on that link I just put in. Go ahead and hit that comment section and ask those questions, and we can get to those later on in the evening. But Brad, dude, I absolutely love what you're doing here. So we talked about so much. I love your change, thing there. You talked about the comfort being in the middle, stretch is the next. And like I must have like spaced out there. What was the third section of the
the third is so the third is doing stuff that just literally scares the pants off you. An example of that would be parachuting or hopping in a shark cage and going, diving with great white sharks in the barrier reef, or just doing something that just completely gets you out of your comfort zone. Like for me, of course, it was going up in the fighter jet, pulling 6Gs. And so when you think about the change, think about where you spend most of your time, then stretch a little bit so that you're doing things that make you largely uncomfortable. And then a couple times a year, man, you just got to shock the system.
I love that. So can you tell me, for the person that's sitting here listening tonight being like, man, I would love to be able to raise $2 billion. How did you get started? I know it sounds like you kind of had a knack for it, but I know that there's, a process there. So like, how did you get started, and what does that process look like?
There's definitely a process for sure, Kirk. And, that's one of the biggest mistakes most rookies make that go out there trying to raise money, is they make a lot of mistakes, obviously, because there is a process behind it. When I was in school at university, I was studying to be an architect, and architecture is a 5-year degree plan. I was in my 4th year, and I was just looking for a part-time job. And so I was just circling ads in the newspaper, and there was a very small oil company in Austin, Texas, which is where I was at UT. And I responded. And so they called me and said, come on in. The CEO would love to talk to you. For whatever reason, he took a liking to me. Maybe it was just that I was smart on my feet and I could think quickly. He said, we're going to teach you how to get on the phone and how to pitch investors, how to raise capital. And so, just working 10 to 12-hour weeks between classes and after school, reaching out to high net worth individuals, I was making close to six figures. And I said to myself, well, God, if I'm just doing this 12 to 15 hours a week, like what could I do theoretically if I turn my back to school and I did this 40 to 50 hours a week, like a real job? And so I did that. And I went to work for a second company, found out that the people running the second company were a little bit dishonest, as you might say. And so I immediately resigned. And when I did, all of the investors that I had cultivated and had been working for turned to me because none of them had really ever met me. I was doing most of the work over the telephone, so they didn't know I was a little 22-year-old kid. They said, well, Brad, what are you going to do now? And I didn't know. And I just saw this huge door open up in my life. And it said, walk through this door. And, like I said earlier on the show, I never drilled an oil well. I had no idea even where to begin to drill one. I had no business history. I was a 22-year-old kid that lacked a college degree, but what I could do was get on the phone and pitch and talk to investors. And so I did that. I printed up some letterheads and business cards, immediately found a securities attorney, and I got a CPA, and then I found a petroleum geologist. And out of that team, I slowly just built what ultimately became a pretty nice sized oil company. At the peak, we had about 35 employees on my payroll, and we were drilling for oil and gas in Texas and Oklahoma and Louisiana. And, I was driving a beautiful sports car, had a nice house. It was just really great. And then, of course, in the late 1980s, early 90s, there were two major events that dramatically changed things. One was the Tax Reform Act that completely changed the tax landscape and took away a lot of the incentives for people to put their money in oil and natural gas. And then the second, of course, is oil prices just plummeted. OPEC had much more control. And so I had to make one of the most challenging and probably difficult decisions I've ever had to make. And that was to slowly just collapse the company. We never had to file for bankruptcy because I didn't have any debt on the books. But over the course of about a year, we just slowly collapsed the business so that one day we no longer existed. Took about a year off because I had a lot of savings at the time and just had a good time and really just kind of looked at what the next chapter in my life was going to be. And then I went back to school, came out with a nice little piece of linen paper that said you graduated. And I just realized I really didn't want to work for other people. I always had that entrepreneurial spirit. And so I kind of went off on this journey, raising capital, consulting with people. And, fast forward, like we've said, I've raised over $2 billion, largely through my efforts and the efforts of sales teams that I've put together and led. A lot of it for projects of my own, but also for other big companies, private equity firms, real estate syndicators and sponsors, etc. And today, just sit home and largely coach and guide and consult people all over the world on how to go about raising capital. It's something that has changed my life, and for the people that have been successful that have come through our community, it's also dramatically enhanced and changed theirs as well. I've got a guy, for example, in Las Vegas that I'm going to be meeting next week. He's going to be with me. He said, look, I signed up for capital school. I implemented what you taught me, and I've raised $5.6 million. I mean, come on. How would $5 million not change anybody's life?
That's awesome.
And so I said, Nicholas, what did you use the money for? He said, I'm using the money to go out and buy businesses. And so he's basically just aggregating and building these businesses, putting them under basically kind of a corporate shell. And I'm like, dude, man, I can't wait to meet you because anybody that's raised $5.6 million implementing largely what I taught them how to do is a huge success. But there's other testimonials, and of course, tons of other people along the way that are having similar success. They've got their pitch deck put together, and it's night and day from where they started. They're having investor conversations. They're filling that pipeline, creating that forward momentum. Some of my students are doing big things today. They're investing in things like multifamily. And for me, that's largely why I created Capital School. That's what it's all about. That's why I'm here. It's really to give back and to show people that, where you are today, if you're unhappy with your current situation, does not have to be where you are this same time next year, because you do have the ability to create that change. Now, whether you choose to do it or whether you don't is entirely up to you, but you do have the ability to bring about that positive change, just like you have the ability to get in shape or to lose weight. And so when you think about yourself, and Stephen Covey writes about this in the book, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he talks about something there called the whole person theory. And I first learned about this principle called the whole person theory from my personal friend and coach, Coach Michael Burke, who's one of the best of the best. And he says, we as people are made up of 4 things: a mind, a body, a spirit, and a soul. Now, it's pretty simple to understand what your body is. That's your physical body. It's pretty simple to understand what your mind is. Your spirit and soul are a little bit more difficult, but one has to do largely with your passion, what you're passionate about, what you pursue, what you want in life. And then, of course, the other is your connection to some type of a spiritual being. Now, whether you're agnostic or whether you're a Christian or whether you're of Jewish faith really doesn't matter. It's just basically a connection with something that is more powerful. But you can change your physical being by just working out every day and dying, right? You can change what goes up here by reading and talking to other people. You can change also your net worth and your finances and your wealth by taking action in that area of life as well. And so this whole concept that I learned about from Coach Bird of being, quote, a whole person, was to seek balance in all areas of life, because what good does it do you to have a lot of money, but at the same time have one foot in the grave, be grossly overweight, and be at risk of heart disease and diabetes? Or what good does it do to, be super fit, but be broke as hell where you're getting evicted? And so, when you look at your life, trying to create balance and a harmonious life where you're sharing equal amounts of time, but you're investing in those things that are most important to you: quality friendships, your health, being fiscally responsible, being prudent with your money, making proper financial decisions. And I see people all the time, they become a little bit successful, and then the first thing they do is they go out and they buy a Rolex, or they do something stupid like they go out and they buy an expensive car like a Lambo, and then they go back into debt and they wonder why they never become wildly successful and financially independent. Don't invest in things like that until your passive income and your assets allow you to pay for those things without tapping into your financial resources. And that's one of the big lessons that I had to learn by mistake is, I was wildly successful as a kid in my late 20s. I went out and I bought the Porsche. I had the Rolex watch. Now, I was making a lot of money and I could afford to do it, but I see a lot of kids today, especially the younger ones, making those big mistakes. And then they wonder why they're not getting ahead financially, why they're not waking up with 7 and 8 figure net worths. One of the big lessons, of course, in life, and we hear this all the time, is delayed gratification. My friend Bobby Castro says, when you start making money, rack it and stack it. And it's a great lesson because life will throw you a curveball. Life ain't easy. You'll get kicked in the knees. You'll get knocked down. And if you don't have a nice cushion of money to fall back on, life can be really, really challenging. That's one of the great things about having money, is it makes those bumps in the road a whole lot easier to get over.
Love that. Hey, so my question now, okay, you talked a little bit about, friendships, finances, those things. What are some other things that you would recommend that you need to have, in line, in place, those habits that you're consistent with?
Great question. Number one, quality friendships. Don't be investing time hanging around people that are negative, that don't support you, don't want you to grow. In those relationships immediately. Limit the amount of time you spend with those types of people, because as you grow and as you start changing, people around you will start to see you as a different person. Your friendships and the people you associate will change. The second thing is focus on yourself. If you're not working out, start working out. Focus on your health. The other thing is, go to the doctor, get your annual checkups, make sure that, you're healthy, that you're not overlooking certain things that you need to be tending to in life. Your dermatologist, looking at your moles and your freckles, obviously going to your physician, and depending on your age, doing certain things, whether it's a colonoscopy or whatever, you really need to take care of yourself. The other is really just basically getting a good sense of where you want to be. It's that goal, that vision. It's something that different people refer to differently. It's like prey drive. Prey drive is the ability to see something in the mind or with the eyes, and then basically pursue it until you catch it or until you basically attain it. And so if you have a goal, understand the framework of completing a goal. Goals have to basically adhere to the acronym SMART. It has to be something that is specific. Just to say, I want to go climb a mountain has no specificity to it. It says, I want to climb Mount Rushmore. That's specific. It should be something that's also measurable. You need to be able to measure the goal to know whether you attained it. And then the A is actionable. It has to physically be something that you can take action on. The R is it needs to be a realistic goal. For someone to wake up, and say, oh, I'm going to climb Mount Everest, fat chance. Now, can you do it? Yeah. But you might be able to do it after you start climbing a smaller mountain like a Mount Rushmore or a Mount McKinley, and then you graduate to a little bit bigger mountain, and maybe it's a 3-year goal where you work up to that. But if you just roll out of bed and say, I'm going to climb Mount Everest this year, unless you're an avid mountain climber and you've got the experience, it's unlikely to happen. And then the T is time bound. It has to have a time commitment to say, I'm going to do this by this deadline or this period of time. And that's what we call the SMART acronym as it relates to creating goals, SMART. So when you're creating a goal, understand that principle and put it out there. Another big thing that I'm a huge proponent of is having what I call a vision board. It's finding pictures of the lifestyle and the things that you want and literally cutting them out and putting them in a place that you see every day. In front of me here, in front of the camera, I've got a vision board. It's things that I want, that I'm pursuing, that I will ultimately have. Many of them I already do. But I'm a big believer of that because I believe that you manifest your future. If you're able to see in your mind where you want to be, then you start creating the habits, then you start creating the activities to start moving yourself forward in that direction. You will essentially manifest in your life where you want to be. And, it's kind of like we hear all the time, whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it will achieve. A lot of it comes down to that manifestation, is you have to manifest it first here before you can deliver it to the body. And one of the things I've learned, because I'm an avid runner, I've run some marathons, I've also competed in triathlons, and I've also listened to people like David Goggins and my good friend Darren Miller, who's one of the world's top endurance athletes. The body will do whatever the mind tells it to. Let me say that again, because that is an important concept. Your body will do whatever the mind tells it to. And so for you to be able to do certain things in life, it's all up here. How do people go run 50 and 100-mile races where most of us can't even fathom running a half a marathon? It's because of the self-talk. They understand how to control this muscle, so this muscle controls every other muscle in their body.
Wow. Okay, so the body will do whatever the mind tells it to. I wrote that down. I circled it. It is. I'm taking
that's a huge lesson to everybody here that's listening to this. And the Navy SEALs have something that they understand. It's called the 40% rule. For anybody here that's ever, run a marathon or, even just goes out and exercises, you get to a point physically where you're tired and your mind is saying, give up, man, I'm tired, I'm sweating. When you get to that point, the Navy SEALs have come to realize over many years that your body has only given 40% of what it's physically capable of delivering. So how do you tap into the other 60% that your body can deliver? It's up here. It's saying, oh man, it's only another 3 miles to the top of the hill. Oh man, I got this. It's only another 8 miles to the finish line. It's the self-talk, because the Navy SEALs are able to get so much more out of these plebes, out of these cadets that are so exhausted and fatigued. Well, how do they build them back up and get them to accomplish, quote, superhuman things? It's by understanding that the mind will fatigue and give up before the body will. But then it's understanding that now comes the self-talk. Now comes the challenge of having this muscle sell all your other muscles to deliver what it's capable of delivering. Because again, the mind is the most important thing that we have. That's the one thing that we control. And so just remember, your body will do whatever the mind tells it to. That's how marathoners cross the finish line. That's how my friend Darren Miller is out there in the mountains in California running 100-mile races as an ultra marathoner. Jesse Itzler, who was at the event, is also an ultra marathon runner. He'll tell you the same thing.
So I've done one ultra. It was like a 50K. So it was like 32 miles. So it was like just the barely. So like it took a good bit of time. So I definitely want to do one again. But you're right. You have to tap into a little bit of, like, hey, that next tree, that next whatever, and then you just kind of like one step in front of the other. So you're exactly right. We have a question from the audience. So what is the best way to not just ask for money, but create relationships with those you're pitching to?
Great question. And that's one of the biggest rookie mistakes that I see people make all the time when I talk to them. And they say, man, I've tried to raise money and I just haven't been successful. I'm kind of floundering. What you have to realize when it comes to raising money is, unless it's a friend or a family member or somebody that already knows you, very few people will open up their checkbook and invest until you do two things. One is you've got to create and build trust. You got to trust me if you're going to invest. The way you do that is you build a relationship. And so inside of our mentorship and our coaching community, we focus on two things. One is called the trust sequence. There's actually 6 things that take place sequentially in order to build trust and to get somebody to a point where they will willfully invest with you. And it starts basically with number 1, which we call perception. It's the introduction that you make when you introduce yourself to somebody else. They're judging you. They're looking at you, everything about you, from the way you dress to what you say, to the quality of your business card, to the quality of your pitch deck. Do you have a website, et cetera, et cetera. As you work through the 6 steps, you get to one that's very important. It's actually step number 4. We call that the validation phrase. Over the years, I've perfected one phrase that I teach people that validates that somebody trusts you enough to now have you pitch them an investment opportunity that they will then likely invest in. Until you ask that phrase and you validate they trust you, you're largely wasting your time pitching, because if they don't trust you, they may be polite and cordial, but when it comes time to open their checkbook, fat chance. When you understand those 6 things and you combine that with something else that we teach called the 4-step blueprint, which understands that you can't pitch the idea or the investment on the first call or meeting, let alone even on the second, because it takes time to build that trust and build that relationship. You understand really that the proper time to pitch and talk about an investment is usually on the 3rd meeting or the 3rd Zoom. After you've asked that validation phrase, your chances of getting investors to commit and to invest capital goes way, way up considerably. And so the biggest mistake most people make is they pitch too early in the process. They've got this idea or they've got this opportunity and they start talking about it too early before they've invested the time on the front end to build that trust, to build that foundation, and really to develop that relationship. Hopefully that helps.
That's huge. And I know that everyone's going to want to hear all 6 and all 4. Is that something that they can get from you on that free offer that we put up on the screen earlier?
Yeah, if they want to send an email, they can just send an email to us at info at bradblazar.com. Just make sure that when you're putting the email address in there, it's info at bradblazar, and it's spelled B-L-A-Z, like zebra, A-R. A lot of people think that it's spelled like a four-wheel drive or like a Brooks Brothers blue sports coat. There's no E in my name. It's all A's. And if you spell it that way, it's insured and it will definitely get to us.
I think I might have accidentally spelled it that way somewhere in my notes.
That's
So
okay.
I do apologize for that. But so let's talk about trust, because trust takes a lifetime to build, and in most cases, and a split second to lose. So how are you building that trust, and how are you instilling into the person that you're talking with, who you're pitching to, a potential prospect, that hey, you are trustworthy?
Yeah. There's a lot that comes into that, especially when you're raising money, Kirk. One is you need to basically invest in the other person. Let's face it, people like to talk about themselves. And so by asking a series of questions in the first and second meetings, you're building that trust because you're taking an interest in that other person. And it's simply just asking questions. And in our mentorship and in our training, we actually provide our students a list of about 20, 25 questions so they don't even have to think about it. But it's just simple things like, when you invest, Kirk, what are you looking for? Are you looking for growth? Are you looking for income? Or are you looking for both? How important are tax benefits to you? Are you using this money to do something special with it, like put your kids through college or maybe buy a second home? What's your time horizon? And just by listening and asking these questions on the front end, you'll start to build and develop that trust. The second way is you need to develop what I call your power team. So many people out there, especially real estate entrepreneurs, they're solopreneurs, meaning that they're working in their business by themselves. They don't really have a lot of depth. And one thing I learned from Shark Tank's Kevin Harrington in building a friendship with Kevin, and when he spoke at our event last year as one of our keynotes, he said, look, let's face it, everybody, a lot of people come through Shark Tank. And a lot of people wonder why certain people get funded and others don't. And really what it comes down to is one thing. Investors, by and large, do not invest in great ideas. You could have the best idea in the world where it's going to make a ton of money. And granted, it is a great idea. But if you can't convince me that you can execute on that idea, why in the world would I invest in you? And so I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they've got this great business idea, but they haven't convinced the investor that they can execute on that idea or on that strategy. And the way that you do that and the way that you communicate that in your pitch deck and your presentation is you build a team around you of other people. You say, over here is my buddy Jimmy. Jimmy is a partner in a law firm. His job is to keep us out of trouble, make sure we dot the I's and cross the T's. Over here, I've got Kirk. Kirk is a partner in an accounting firm. He's going to be our interim chief financial officer. He's going to take care of all the accounting, all the bookkeeping, and make sure at the end of the year you get your tax information. Over here, I've got so-and-so, and he's going to take care of this aspect of the business. And so by doing that, you're able to articulate and communicate to that potential investor that you've now got a team, but that team can now execute on the investment objective and on that strategy. Therefore, you're dramatically increasing your chances of getting funded and getting the investment that you seek. And that's one of the big mistakes I think a lot of people make when they go out there is they don't build that team. They don't put the people's bios in their pitch deck, or they don't put the people's images or bios on their website. And so when an investor looks at you, He's just looking at you, and he starts having doubts and concerns in the back of his mind, wondering, well, can he execute on this? Is he going to be able to pull this off? And, investors, whether they verbally tell you or they don't, have reasons not to invest. They're like big stop signs. Your job, by going through the mentorship and the coaching, is to understand that process and understand how to basically break down those stop signs so that you can drive right through and go from meeting somebody to building a relationship, then to ultimately having them open up their checkbook and writing you a check and becoming a capital partner and an investor of yours.
Wow. Okay. So we have developed a power team. So as we're closing in on the end of the hour here, I do want to hit this because I was like, man, you talked about that power team, right? So how do you find, attract, align, develop, and retain the people that you want in your power team?
It's largely just building relationships. I mean, if you're an entrepreneur or a business owner, at some point you are going to need a CPA. Now, it might not be a CPA because they tend to be a little bit expensive, but maybe it's an enrolled agent. Maybe it's just a bookkeeper. Maybe it's somebody that you find on a website where you can outsource and just pay them hourly as you're slowly building and you're slowly gaining success. You don't have to go out and pay salaries to people to build a business. You outsource. You start delegating to certain people. Hey, I need someone to keep my books and records. Hey, I need somebody to basically keep me out of trouble, to make sure that I have an understanding of the securities rules and regulations and what I can be doing and what I can't be doing. And so as you start doing this, you start building these alliances and these relationships. Now, the good thing is many of them at some point might turn into full-time relationships where now that person does become your full-time employee, or maybe they do become your full-time attorney. But, for most people just getting started, you're bootstrapping it, and I get it. But at the same time, you have to be able to show a potential investor that you're thinking of all of these different things because they're thinking of them. When somebody invests, one of the first things that I tell my students is you have to have what I call a warm down period, so that that investor now does not get cold feet and does not get buyer's remorse. So you now have to say, Kirk, thank you so much for entrusting your hard-earned dollars with us. I want to share with you what happens next. In a couple of days, you're going to get a certificate that's going to memorialize your investment in our firm. You're going to get a welcome packet that's going to walk you through the next steps of creating your login and your user profile on our website so that you can monitor your investment. At the end of the year, you're going to get your tax reporting information. And so you start basically building the expectations. So now that investor does not get that buyer's remorse. They don't get cold feet. And as they see you executing and delivering on the things that you've just articulated and communicated, you start building what I call even more trust. And the best part about building more trust and getting that investor to a point of comfort is they then start sharing your name with their friends. They start getting checks in the mail on a regular basis. And so when they're out golfing with their buddies, they kind of are braggadocious. Hey, I just invested in this really cool apartment building down on the coast, and I'm getting a check in the mailbox every quarter. And this guy's getting ready to do another deal. Would you have an interest in taking a look at it too? Sure. Heck yeah. And before you know it, raising money starts to become much easier. It's not that you're getting better. It's just now the people that you're connected with are connecting you with their people. And now that becomes a warm introduction. It's much better when you're raising money if Kirk is telling somebody else what a wonderful person Brad Blazer is than me trying to convince that person myself. And so by understanding that principle, raising money actually gets easier the more you do it, because you're able now to hopefully get referrals from people that are part of your network that have invested, that are now seeing success with whatever it is you're currently doing.
Wow, like the compounding effect. I love that.
Yeah.
Brad, this has been a power-packed hour. So thank you so much for your
I
time.
appreciate that.
I mean, like I literally, I'm on the second page of notes over here. So I really do appreciate your time. I got extreme value from it. I know our audience did as well. If you are listening to us for the first time, go ahead and sign up for the newsletter. We'll give you show notes. We'll give you direct links to everything that we're talking about. Otherwise, check the link out in the comment section below to figure out how you can sign up and get into Brad Blazer's network, because your network is your net worth, as he mentioned earlier. Brad, is there anything that you like to leave us with? How to find you, social media? Like, give it to us.
Well, you got to realize, number one, there's only one Brad Blazer. There's only one $2 billion guy. I've got a lot of imposters out there on the internet, on Instagram, and we're well aware of them. We report them, and all my followers report them too, but they're out there. And so just look at my name, folks. It's Brad Blazer. No E's, all A's. On Instagram, it's the little ampersand, Brad Blazer. Facebook, of course, LinkedIn. You can go to my website, just www.bradblazer.com. If you have an interest in buying any of my books, you can find them all on Amazon. The easiest way to find them is go to the search bar at the top of Amazon and just put in my name, and all three of the books will come up. You can buy them all individually. You can buy them as a package. If you want me to sign them and autograph for them, which is pretty cool, just buy them through my website or send us an email, and we'll sign them here at the office. We'll put them in an envelope, and we'll ship them out to you. That way you have an autograph copy, which personalizes it for you. But I'll just leave with this. A lot of people look at me and they're like, man, you're where I want to be. I want to be speaking on stages. I mean, my God, you've graced the stage with some of the greats, people like boxing legend Floyd Mayweather, or, Shark Tank's Kevin Harrington, or, Dr. John Maxwell, Jesse Itzler. Like, how long have you been doing this? And when I share the fact that I've only been doing this a couple of years, are like blown away, thinking that I've done it for a decade, like Tony Robbins or someone at that level. And the answer is no. But to get from where I started to where I am today happened very, very quickly for one and only one reason. And it was what I said earlier, basically in the show. It was, I made a decision to go pro and really just invest myself 100%, where I showed up every day. I'm doing the things that I know I need to be doing. I hired and I started working with a business coach. It's had a huge impact on my life and my business today, because what I will share with your listeners, and I hope this sinks in, is you don't know what you don't know. I know so much more than you know. And people that are on stages for a reason. They have information that you don't know. Once you start reading, once you start going to events, once you start opening up your mind to the way these hugely successful people think, you're like, wow, there was a whole world out there that I didn't even know. And then once you start getting that knowledge and start implementing and chipping away by putting some effort and action behind it, you can literally change your life dramatically and start doing much bigger things. But it all starts basically with the desire. It starts with the want. And then it starts basically with just waking up and saying, where do I go to get this new information? One of the great places, of course, is right here on Kirk Show, the rescue site. And so just keep coming back, just keep listening, and more importantly, just keep learning.
Brad Blazer, everyone. Give it up for my man, Brad Blazer.